Welcome to Beyond Hospitality, a loose discussion on all things hospitality in the drink and food industry, with a primary focus on specialty coffee. We're your hosts, Jay and Becca.
And in this episode of Beyond Hospitality, we're going to take a closer look into us. So stick around and find out a little bit about myself, Jay, and my co-host, Becca.
Collectively, we have several years in the specialty coffee industry, from baristas all the way up to cafe managers. And basically our goal is to educate ourselves, along with you, in learning more about the specialty coffee industry.
So let's jump in. Today, we are both answering a selection of questions to allow you to get to know us better. So here we go. Becca?
So I'm Becca, and I've been in the specialty coffee industry for going on 7-8 years. And obviously it's not my first rodeo. I was in the television and media industry before that. Wanted to get into specialty coffee just because it was a hobby of mine, and I just loved it, and I obsessed about coffee, living in San Francisco at the time. And I, on a whim, applied to, I think, one of the best specialty coffee companies in the world, and freakishly enough, they hired me. And that, I guess, the rest is history. I started as a barista, was eager to learn, and had the opportunity in the San Francisco Bay Area to work at about 5 cafes as a barista, as a lead barista, and then also training as eventually a cafe manager. So, and that's actually how I met Jay. Working as a manager, I was managing one of the coffee shops in San Francisco during the pandemic, and got to have the opportunity to work with Jay, and the rest is history. It's been a wild and crazy ride, and I'm excited to see what new adventures we come up with.
Absolutely.
How about you, Jay? What's your version?
Well, a little bit about myself and my background. My name's Jay, and I have little over 4 years experience in coffee and specialty coffee, a little bit more in hospitality in general. And beyond that, I've also worked in a little bit of media, a little bit of tech, in a number of roles, mostly operations side of things, but always have had a huge passion for coffee. I think what I've told people before is I've been a coffee nerd since before I can remember, and kind of had a change of career come up and decided that I wanted to follow my passion on things, and kind of applied to, one of the better coffee shops in the area, in the Bay Area at the time. I think I was also living in San Francisco, and a friend of mine was working at a place. They recommended me that I apply there, and I did. And just like yourself, Becca, luckily enough, they thought I was capable enough to bring me on board. Starting out as a barista and working my way up all the way to eventually a cafe manager myself as well. So similar tracks there. I believe I was your assistant manager at the time at a specific location, but I think the two of us, we worked together there for a little over a year before I think work took me in a different direction. But I think that really just kind of spurred on our friendship outside of work. So it was a beautiful thing, and I'm glad to get to have this moment with you now.
I find it funny in the sense of like how we met and how similar our backgrounds of like working in media and you working in tech, and like also just kind of geeking out on the coffee. We had a lot to talk about, I think, as working together, but it was really when you moved up to like my level of like cafe managers and we were working together. I think that's where the camaraderie and the bonding really happened, because going through the trenches together. Like we went through some trenches there, and that I got to see how you managed your cafe, and kind of learning off of each other. It was a great opportunity. I'm kind of excited of going on this adventure of trying to start a podcast. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure we're going to stumble along the way, but I'm ready for the adventures. Let's go have some fun. So then I'm going to ask you the next question.
Okay.
How did you come up with the idea, or how did we come up with the idea? Mine's a little foggy.
Okay. Well, I think the kind of the inklings of this started while the two of us were on a trip earlier in this year. We were both visiting Seoul, South Korea, and it was a truly wonderful experience to visit the country and the city and meet the people, see the culture. But I think the two of us were just absolutely blown away by the coffee scene there and the hospitality and just the approach to the total experience that one gets, not just into a coffee shop, but like into any restaurant or bar or retail experience. We were just really impressed with everything. And I think it was you that kind of made the offhand comment of like, wouldn't it be funny if we could just like do this all the time and travel and just kind of record it and have like a YouTube thing. And one day I kind of texted you, hey, what if we started a podcast?
You actually came up with the podcast idea. I was just thinking we should just be on YouTube traveling the world, drinking coffee, and not really sure if we could actually make any money off of that. And you had the idea for the podcast.
And I think once we kind of like, wait, let's do this. This sounds great. It was kind of history, and we immediately got to work on, admittedly, a lot on your end of things right now, but I think we have put together a great little idea here and hope to see it grow.
Like, we've had actually several coffee adventures, not just Seoul, but I mean, in the span of a year, we met up in Seoul and we just had so much coffee. And then we went to Seattle. We did the same thing because, I mean, how can you not go to Seattle and drink? Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go to Seoul, you might as well go to Seattle and check out the coffee there. Got to compare. And then also New York. And I think that honestly, the more I thought about it, like, are we the only ones that are geeking out about coffee this much? Are we the only ones that are like making traveling plans about where's the best coffee culture in the world, or what's going on with specialty coffee? And just in comparison of being somewhere, even if you're traveling for another reason, but like going to a coffee shop and really kind of comparing the culture and the quality of the coffee from what you've had in the past, like it kind of, to me, it just seemed like a great fit to just like, I wish I could do that every day of my life. I know we're not the only ones that think like this, and I know we're not the only ones that geek out on coffee. So I felt like we got to find those people. We got to, bring them along.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of leads me into my next question for you, which is, how do you envision this podcast?
I do kind of envision this podcast really deep diving into and geeking out. I think that's a primary focus of geeking out in specialty coffee. And when you're talking about specialty coffee, you can't put the word specialty in front of something and then not also talk about hospitality, because I feel no matter what industry, um, if you're doing specialty, if you're being something special, if you're doing higher quality, if it's in, I can't even talk, but like in food or in travel or in um, industries where you're making products, if it's going to be special, it also has to be delivered in a way that is going to uplift that item. And I think that that's exactly what hospitality is. And for a layman's term of like, what is hospitality? It's just leveling up a quality of whatever it is that you're focusing on. And so for me, I really want to like make that the primary focus of the podcast. If we can have those discussions about great cups of coffee, but then also cafes that are thriving, baristas that are on the top of their game, and really deep diving into what that how they're providing that service and that product. It's primarily, I think we're going to be talking about hospitality a lot. So I love that we have that in our name of Beyond Hospitality, because it's not just, I know we're going to be talking primarily on coffee, but like there's so much more. There's so much more to unpack. And so that's what I think I envision this podcast being, that we're really unpacking what specialty coffee is.
I just want to kind of like, I think that my opinion is a lot of the same. And just to continue along on your point, is that what I want to see, what I would envision from this podcast is just a real exploration of the world of hospitality. Um, and as you say, speaking with those baristas, speaking with those hosts, those servers that are just enabling all these amazing experiences that we enjoy, that we get to enjoy every single day. And what goes into that, what's the thought process behind that, just a complete exploration of this is a beautiful, delicious cup of coffee, but what is everything that is around this that has helped to create this experience? And that's what I'm passionate about and would really love to explore in that world, and explore all of the delicious coffees that go along with that, and hopefully get to share all of that with you.
Looking into 2024, I think that that's really exciting. I think there's a lot that we can do, and super excited.
What, Becca, are your top 3 topics you'd love for us to see or talk about?
I think my three, at least at the moment, is I'm primarily, I think, education right off the bat. Like I do envision, outside of like um, how to make a perfect pour over, or that kind of stuff. I really would like to deep dive into the educational side of specialty coffee. I think you and I were very privileged of coming from a specialty coffee company that really prided itself on educating the baristas and educating the guests about what makes it specialty,
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
makes it a really good cup of coffee. And I think, I feel like there was only just a fraction of the whole story that we were still getting, even though it's a grand story. And there's so much information online about specialty coffee, and at times it can be a little overwhelming, of like, especially when you're geeking out at home with, oh, I've had a great cup of coffee at this cafe and I really want that again. And it's something, maybe a single origin. I don't know what that means. I would love for us to be, kind of that platform where you can learn a little bit more about like what a single origin is and all that kind of stuff. But also going beyond that for people who are in specialty coffee, um, that know how to make that perfect pour over. Let's talk about, kind of more of like the aspect of running that cafe, and having that hospitality be your focus as that cafe is running on the day to day, not just for the managers or the owners of those cafes, those smaller coffee shops, but also for the baristas who are interested in this story. And it's when you find those places and those nuances of like, I remember I had this coffee on that date at that coffee shop, and it was a Rwanda, and it mind blowing. It wasn't because it was just a part-time person, doing their job, even though the barista might have been part-time, but there was a lot of education, and there was a lot of effort, and there was a lot of production that was put into that cup of coffee. And I would love to have that information there for people who are learning to, or wanting to really break that down. We're living in such an exciting time right now because there's so many new products, so many new roasteries, and so many, even though people are like, it's just coffee, like I would love to do more product reviews,
Yeah.
coffee reviews, but also equipment reviews. I would love to figure out like deep dive of like what is a really good, what is the best way to make a great cup of coffee? Is there a best way? I don't know, but I'm willing to try. I may like to talk about the generalized stuff, but Jay, you know this stuff, and I've always think of when I have a question about coffee, I'm always like, ask Jay, text Jay. So it'll be fun to do those reviews with you and to hear your opinion and to have you tell us more about the educational side of it. But then earlier in the year, saw this article about the best specialty coffee shops in each state of the US. And I was like, that's right there, right there. That's what I want to do for the year. I want to go every week. I want to go to one of these cafe, a new state and a new coffee shop. And so I would love to go beyond the US, but I think that part of me would really like to check out these coffee shops across the country, but also across the world. And what's making it unique, what's making it stellar. Is it truly the hospitality? Is it the baristas? Or is it truly that amazing cup of coffee and the amazing roast? Or is it a combination? How
Exciting.
about you, Jay? Now that I've taken all that time,
Well,
this is a big question. This is a big question.
top three topics or things I'd like to see. Well, start us off with the biggest thing I would like to see from the podcast. I don't know if this is necessarily a topic, but um, what I would like to see is just the ability to use this platform to share a lot of my coffee knowledge and my cafe knowledge, my hospitality knowledge. I think you just touched on this, where I'm not to brag, but a little bit of a resource when it comes to this. But I have such a passion for sharing and for teaching other folks about coffee, whether it be, you know, someone tasting their first like single origin coffee or just like first dipping their toes into, Frappuccino or something, all the way up to someone that wants to talk about, let's talk about these two different brewing methods and what's the strengths or detractors from each one. I really love sharing my knowledge of coffee, love chatting with folks about coffee and the greater hospitality picture at large, and sharing what makes a good experience, what makes a poor experience, what elements go into that good experience. Was it just that you got greeted when you came in, or was it like, did you come in and the music was just perfect and at the right volume, and the room was decorated beautifully, and all of their merchandise was set up nice, and not only were you greeted, but you had a moment of connection with the person there, and they kind of turned you on to something interesting. Like, what makes a great hospitality experience? Like, I'd love to share that. I'd love to, for our listeners, to share their great hospitality experiences. So I'm just really passionate about continuing to learn, Aaron, and continuing to share with our listeners. So that's my number one. My number two, for what I'd love to see, and this I think is more of a topic, but the culture of coffee. I would really love to dig into just the culture behind this whole scene, this whole industry that we just absolutely adore. What is a flat white? What makes a flat white? Where does it come from? What's a cortado? Why is it called that? Why is coffee done this way in this part of the world? Why is it done completely differently over here? And what is the etymology of that? Like, what is the history? What goes into all of this? Is it influences from elsewhere? Is it more of traditional cultures that are blending with the new coffee scenes coming in? I am absolutely fascinated by this. I think we got a little bit of a taste of this while we were traveling around earlier this year, the two of us. But I would just love to continue to talk about this and the differences between the coffee scene and culture of the US versus Europe versus Australia versus Asia Pacific. There's versus the Middle East. There's so many different approaches to how to serve coffee, but also how to have hospitality around coffee. And this is something that I'm really fascinated by and one of my passions. So I want to have an episode or two on this topic. It's kind of my big thing. And I, I think for my number three, once again, less a topic, but I would love to continue to learn with all of our guests and all of our listeners. I know what I know, but I want to continue to improve my knowledge in order to share that with more of you out there. And, as I say, we don't know what we don't know. So I don't know what I don't know about hospitality and coffee yet. And I think that, one, to improve myself, but also to continue to have stuff to share with everyone out there. I want to continue to learn with our guests, to learn with our listeners, so that we can learn as a group. Something I always tell baristas when I'm training them and after they're newly hired is I love questions, because if I know the answer, I get to teach you. But if I don't know the answer, that means we both get to learn at the same time, which is even better. And that's kind of the approach that I want to bring to this is, if I know the answer, fantastic. I get to teach it to everybody or help you out. But if I don't know, that means we both get to learn together, which is even better.
That we could have a whole segment on that of what Jay didn't know, and we can all learn together.
I love this.
Right? That could be fun. I'm just throwing it out there. We've got ideas. But also getting that out to the world. We've had a couple discussions on this, and I have definitely had a time or two where I've sat in bed in the middle of the night going, how are we going to get this podcast out to the people? How do we get this? But I guess my question to you is, and we were talking about this just a little earlier about what platforms do we plan to use? What would you say so far?
So,
what can we say for sure?
For sure, platforms that you will be able to find us is definitely on Spotify, Apple Music. Eventually, we will be on YouTube. Book and mark your calendars. It will also be available anywhere else fine podcasts are sold. So if you need to seek us out, we're out there and available for you.
I'm really excited. I'm curious where our listeners are going to come from. I think we'll try to keep tabs on that as we, in our podcast, try to get some interaction with our listeners. But it will be interesting to see where they're listening from, not only in what part of the world, but also on what platforms they'll be using. So, Jay, my next question to you is, what would you say your niche is, and how do you think it'll help our viewers?
I think that my niche is that I have a very unique viewpoint on the industry and hospitality in general. One, from having a interest in coffee and specialty coffee for considerable amount of time. Two, from having worked in the industry for, going on 5 years now. But also, I think this is a big influence on my viewpoint on things is just having been a consumer, and from being a consumer of hospitality and experiences at a high level. Something I would always look for is I want the best. Obviously, cost is a concern on things, but at a certain point, it's just I want to have a great experience, and I'm going to make it happen. And for myself, outside of my hospitality and coffee fascination, I am also a big, cocktail and restaurant and fashion nerd. So I am definitely seeking out these experiences and this has been something that's just kind of part of my way of being, is I want to go into an establishment and have a connection with someone. Like, if I'm going into a place and they're serving a interesting single origin coffee or even an interesting blend coffee, I want to know more about it. Tell me about this. Tell me about this coffee. Let me know about this coffee. Tell me about your lattes or like your new seasonal flavored latte. I'd love to know about it. Uh, and what is that hospitality? What is that feedback that I get from the barista there? Like, is it good? Is it bad? And same thing if I'm going into a store and I'm looking at, I don't know, a nice sweater or something. I want to have that kind of back and forth. So I think that I have a very unique viewpoint on what I'm looking for in the industry and what I'm looking for from a hospitality experience. And I think that my approach is to always look at things from the guest's point of view, to try and understand it from their point of view. I think that this is something that definitely the two of us can relate with, is we always will have instances where people think that the guests are being too demanding. But I think that it is important to try and understand, where are they coming from and what is their expectation, and if it is in line with where we should be as a coffee shop, as a business, as an industry, where are we failing to not meet those expectations? Because honestly, we should be going above and beyond those expectations. So I think I have a unique viewpoint from my both personal and professional life. And I'm a little bit mouthy about things, so I'll let you know if you're doing a good job or a bad job.
I'm sure we'll get honest reviews from you. We always do. Honest feedback from Jay.
I can't help myself
No, and I think,
sometimes.
but that's part of the fun of like getting to know you and all those, as you mentioned, bringing in all those elements of not just coffee, but like specialty, hospitality, but also like pairing that with, food, or having that same experience with some cocktails, or even in fashion. I love the idea of trickling in all those elements into our show as well, because I think for guests and for listeners, we're gonna find that that's also on their mind as well. Like, again, it's not somebody that just geeks out about coffee or specialty coffee, or um, wants to learn the specifics of specialty coffee, who doesn't also, turn that focus and think that deeply about other elements in their life, fashion, or the food that they're eating, or the places that they're dining, or the places that they're traveling, or just I think that that is going to be a fun elements to add to it, to the but the niche really will be, I think, primarily that focus on coffee and hospitality. I think that will run through, but I think what we're going to find is that if you just go a little step further, you're going to find that that whole approach to specialty coffee and hospitality is going to go above and beyond just those two things, and it's a bigger, deeper part of life. And I think our viewers are the people that want to stop and smell the roses. They want to stop and have a really good cup of coffee while they're not just in Rome, but when they're in somewhere in Nebraska, or I can't even think of a city in Nebraska, but I want to know, I want to find a really good cup of coffee there and have those moments, and to hear from viewers that are there and saying, no, Nebraska actually has a really amazing coffee,
And we want to hear
roaster
about it.
or
And
a
we want
coffee
to
shop.
hear about it.
Oh, totally. Please invite us. We'll be there. Like, let's do it. Let's learn about that. Finding those specialty coffee moments and hospitality moments where you're at, you know. And I think that that is going to be our niche. I think, again, not just for where you're at, but like where you are in that development. If you're if you're new to specialty coffee, or if you're a barista, or if you're a seasoned roaster, who's been making specialty coffee, more than, the age of your kid. Like, cool, awesome. But I think that we'll have things here for everybody in that sense. And it's not too broad. I think that is our niche, is that we'll be focusing on that specialty coffee and hospitality and all that that entails. And there's enough there. It's going to keep us busy enough for a little bit.
We've got some ideas. We've got some plans. So what are your oh hell no ideas?
Yes. This is our last question for the episode. So I'm very excited for this one. I think what I don't want us to be, and no offense, but like, I think it's already been done. And I think that niche is flourishing, is I don't want to be making, videos or podcasts about hacking, popular coffee company seasonal drinks.
Well put.
No offense to anybody. And I have worked in coffee where we're making caramel blended things. But I don't want to be doing that. I don't think what our listeners want to hear is how to make a, seasonal holiday hack drink to save, the $6.
No recipe hacks
latte
for you, Becca.
But like, I think that's my big one. How about you, Jay?
I specifically do not want to do or get into doing reaction videos. I think that those are plenty fine, and that there are a lot of folks doing those very well. But I feel that with what we're trying to create here, and with the types of just negativity that can happen in the cafes, that those types of videos really promote almost an us versus them and an adversarial kind of behavior and environment. And that's just not something I want to get into in our fun space right here, because I want everyone to come along with us. I want baristas, I want people working in the cafe, I want guests, people that love coffee, to come along with us too. And I don't think that promoting poor behavior from people's parts is the best use of our time. And whether it be like a top 50 Karen crazy video, or can you believe what this barista did video, I'm really not here to watch other people's content and comment on it. I'm here to have something interesting to talk about with you, Becca, and with you, my lovely listeners. So that's where I'm at. I really would like to keep a high level of conversation, shall we say.
Fair enough. Beautifully said, first of all, but like, genuinely, I think fair enough, because there's a lot of those out there. And there's definitely the two sides of the story, two sides of the coin. Like, we could go all day. But that's not what you and I are about. And I think I've had conversations with my team and, managing coffee shops, where you have to remind them that's not the point.
Exactly.
The point is, we're trying to give this next person who walks through the door the best cup of coffee that they've had, not just for today or this week, but potentially for the month or their whole life.
Exactly.
Like, having that experience, I have definitely had those moments where you as a barista, where you like give this, and you are thinking this is just one in a dozen, and that person comes up to you and like, oh my, this is mind blowing. I will never forget this. But also myself as a guest, I remember the first time that I had an amazing cup of coffee, and I was like, I can never go back. so I love that. I think there's enough out there in the world of the good. I'm not even gonna say the good stuff, but like, there's enough out there to keep you and I busy, and to keep our listeners entertained, that I don't think that we have to go there. I will love to have some discussions on when that falls into like hospitality and how we can improve. And I'm
Of
sure that
course.
we'll graze it, but like, as you mentioned, the no reaction, or the us and them mentality. Love it. I love it. Any other questions? I think we've gone through all the questions today. Okay, those are for mine as well. And I guess we should open that up to the listeners too on this pilot episode. If you've listened this far and you have questions for us, or want to make a comment, or if you have any suggestions, coffee beans, we'll take it. Equipment, let us know what you're loving. Also, some ideas on episodes that you would like to, topics you'd like to see on our podcast. Please let us know in the comments. We'll make it a point. There's 2 of us. We can clearly get through all of those, and gives us some inspiration, but also have you feel engaged as well. So please leave comments below. Want to obviously thank you for listening. If you've lasted this long, super appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed. And yeah, again, thanks for listening to the pilot episode of Beyond Hospitality. And we hope you'll join us next time. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.